Welcome everyone to the Silicon Valley Project AI, ensuring success with AI in the enterprise. We're co-hosted with the Palo Alto Data Science Association and Agile Principles. Get to use this cool pointer here so I can move anywhere. So I'll just quickly walk you through the agenda. Obviously, we just did the food and drinks. That was pretty easy. Hopefully everyone's enjoying the pizza. Right? Cool. I never had Blue Line before. It's pretty awesome. Hey, we're going to do the welcome and introduction. So I'm Rob Franklin. I am the founder organizer of Silicon Valley Project AI. This is our fourth one. So we started out in the beginning of the year. My goal was to do one meetup a quarter, and here we are. Thank you. And here we are. We've done 4 and with the help of a lot of different people. And we're going to thank them all at the end too. We'll do some member introductions and then we'll have our speakers. Andrea is going to talk about why do analytics and most data ML programs fail. And I think this is something very close to my heart. I spent 2 years at Bank of New York working with their data science teams. And the funny story that I share about this in particular is when I was at BNY, the teams were really struggling to deliver models to production. And I just thought that that was a systemic issue of where we work. But then what I learned when I went to a couple of conferences is that every big company is struggling, trying to deliver machine learning, artificial intelligence to production, getting value. So these were the Wells Fargo, Standard & Poor's, small companies, medium companies, all were kind of struggling with this. And what I found was, it's as simple as like some of the, the simple things. At least with the teams I was working with, they didn't even have a problem statement. So you had teams that were trying to deliver machine learning and they weren't really clear on the problem they were trying to solve. It sounds almost like too simple, but I know Andrea's going to talk a lot about that. So I thought it would be really great to have her to share sort of what she's learned in that space. The other thing that I was, the Holy Grail, when Scott Middleton, who spoke at our last meetup, when we first got together, was imagine if you could proactively predict the health of a project by using Slack chats and Google Docs and just content, not only content from across the enterprise, but you might be recording a meeting, right? And you're taking that audio and you're translating it. And lo and behold, Ravi comes out of the, and he has a startup. And guess what they're doing? They're doing exactly that. So we always try to mix up like 2 presenters, one talking, sort of about sort of the program project side. That's what we had last time with Matt Steele from Domino, talking about model management. And then we have more of a startup or not a technical talk. You're never going to learn how to program Python here. That's not the sort of goal. The goal is really to share, about the Project AI space. So we'll have them talking and we're going to network and mingle and have fun. So what's the vision? So when I put this together, this is just a pure passion, right? I was excited. I've been doing project management, program management, Scrum mastering, Agile coaching, and when Scott and I sat down, he challenged me to put together a meetup. And this is, sort of what we're about here is really bringing people together, right, to connect with their passion for Project AI and creating a space where you can get energized, make connections. So with that being said, one of the things that came out, if you notice, there's a board back there, 2 whiteboards. One whiteboard on the right-hand side is job opportunities. So if you know of job opportunities or you want to promote your company and you're looking for people, put a yellow sticky up on there and write the information, share the love. Or if you're looking for an opportunity, same thing, put it on that board on the bottom part. Again, this is really important because we only get better with your feedback. And on the way out, I asked that there's another board with those magnets up top. It's a simple retrospective. And there you get to say, add, drop, continue. So add like, hey, I'd love if you add more cowbell to this meeting. There's a sticker already there. I won't say who did it. It's me. No, but it's there. Or continue. I really like, talks on sort of how to deliver AI programs. Or drop, like, hey, that guy Rob talking up front, drop that, go right into the presentations. That's fine too. And then it's what I call the shout out category. Hey, I really love that pizza. Continue pizza. Pizza's good. I like beer. I didn't like wine. Whatever you like, take your time because that's how we'll get better and improve. And then just here's the quick recap. So on our last meetup, which we had at BNY Mellon, we had Scott Middleton, a strategist, and his sort of startup is all about sort of interactive chat driving sort of project management and improving. So a chat will sort of proactively say, give you some coaching on how your team is doing. Or the chat may, via a Slack chat, say, hey, could you please update your, status on a story or a task? Also proactively identifying sort of, again, going on that sort of health of a project as well. So proactive chat, project chat sort of training is where Stratahost was kind of targeting. And then we also had Mr. Steele, and I'm totally forgetting his first name, and I already said it. But from Domino, and Domino is a company that does a software that does specifically model management. So model management from idea to productionalization. And what I really thought was very powerful about that is that's where a lot of companies are struggling, right? How do you take an idea for machine learning, build that model, productionalize it, and ship it to production? And they have a whole life cycle that he went through. And they also have more of an infrastructure to do monitoring of your models, to build a model, on the fly. So the teams that I've worked in the past, if you had another team come in and try to build a model that team one did, that may take 3 months, that may take 6 months, it may never ever get done. The automation of models, so that you could just push a button and you can rebuild a model at any point in the version. That's kind of what Domino does. It's really cool stuff. And then we had our job board. So here's the favorite part. This is where I always get a little pit in my stomach, so it's okay. It's the opportunity for you guys to break out into groups of 4 or 5, or at the tables that you're at, and just introduce yourselves. We'll take 15 minutes. Each person could go around. You don't have to follow this exactly, but who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? And why did you come to this meetup? It's meant to sort of connect you guys. And what always happens, even though you might not want to do that at this very moment, I'm going to have to beg you to stop, right? It'll be like, all right, we're going to have our first speaker, and you will want to continue to talk. So just take 15 minutes, introduce yourselves to your table, break out into self-organize into groups of 4, and we'll get started with our first presenter at about 5 to 7. All right. Yeah. So let's do you want? No, that's not ours. I think it's Robbie. Do you want? Yeah, so let's get you plugged in. We'll get you set up.
Testing.
We might not need it, you know.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? You've had your wine, your pizza, beer, ready to get started? All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out to Why Many Analytics Programs Fail. My name is Andrea Amaraggi. Now, can I have a show of hands? Does anyone work with data or work with or do any kind of analytic programming as part of their roles? So some, okay. Has anyone of those individuals, have you ever been a part of a program that didn't quite go so well? I've been involved in a lot of them, unfortunately, but I've learned a lot in the process. And I'm here to share with you tonight some of the things that I've learned over the years from working with various companies about how programs and analytics can be successful. Now, this presentation, I did this presentation about 3 weeks ago, and Rob was nice enough to allow me to come in and talk to you tonight. I know this particular meetup kind of has a bent towards AI and machine learning. So machine learning, as far as analytics, there's a part of analytics that can involve machine learning. So I will incorporate as many machine learning examples as I can if anyone does do any kind of data science with machine learning. So a little bit of background. As I said, my name is Andrea Amaraggi. I'm the founder and principal of Cohere Insights. It is a strategic and advisory consultancy. I help companies develop analytic strategy and then do the technical implementation of that strategy. I have been involved in this space for about 20 years. The first tools that I worked with that were considered analytics tools back then, we just called them like reporting tools, was a tool called Cognos PowerPlay, which was this little like cube engine that sat over a relational database and allowed companies to get some summary level information. It was powerful at the time, but it didn't really allow for a lot of transactional analysis. You had to use another Cognos tool for that. So things have changed a lot. Technology has changed dramatically, obviously, since then. But I've done application development, technical development. I then went into business consulting, where I would work with various businesses to figure out what their analytics should be. I went into technical program and project management. So I've kind of had this full view of how analytics programs should go. And so I've learned a lot. I'm going to be sharing that information with you. Now, in the presentation summary of the presentation, I put in some numbers because I wanted to grab people's attention. Everyone seems to gravitate towards numbers and metrics nowadays. I'm going to talk about those numbers in a minute. What I have here on my screen, though, is 187 billion. Does anyone want to take a guess at what I'm alluding to here? Loss? Almost. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm? E-commerce. Is it? Is that a true fact? Wow. That is a coincidence. That's a remarkable coincidence. Actually, the gentleman over here is correct. It's the estimated worldwide spending of big data and analytics programs by the year 2019. This is according to IDC research. So clearly, companies see value in data and analytics, and they want to get to that value. So here's another set of numbers. 60 to 85%. What do you think this might mean? Yes. So failure rate of big data and analytics programs is 60 to 85%. That's according to Gartner. So this is a pretty remarkable failure rate when you think about that $187 billion. So if we quantify this, everyone likes numbers, right? Failure rate out of, if it's 60 to 85% off of 187 billion, so the failure amount is 112 billion to almost 160 billion dollars, which is, it's staggering, right? That is a huge loss. Companies are investing, but they're not getting value, and that is literally money that is being tossed in the trash can. So why aren't companies getting value? That are some of the things that we're going to explore. Now, to kind of put this in perspective, a fun fact, 160 billion is also the GDP of Kazakhstan and Hungary each, to kind of put it in perspective. So why is the failure rate so high? So the failure rate, anything can be considered a failure if we're measuring failure subjectively. So when we talk about failure, it's really important to identify what the success criteria is. And the success criteria of any program should be something that is objective and is measurable. Otherwise, we have no idea if what we're delivering is successful. And success criteria is something that should be identified at the beginning of a program. We don't want to invest all this time, money, resources in building something and then give it out to users to find out it's really not what they needed and they're going to deem it failure. So we want to define this up front. So what I've learned in this 20 years of working with various companies is that analytics programs start with strategy and success criteria, and they end with solutions that are scalable, supportable, sustainable, and that deliver business and organizational value. Now I'm kind of meandering here in my slide. That's the technical program piece, which we're going to talk about. But you start at the beginning and you end at the end. You don't start in the middle. So companies that will have a bunch of data and they say, hey, let's get some data scientists on this and see what kind of value we can come up with, that's starting in the middle. If you don't have a business purpose behind this analysis, you could be setting yourself up for failure. Likewise, technology. Has anyone worked for a company where people said, hey, there's this hot new technology on the market, let's go get it? Data analytics technology. I've seen that happen a lot. That's also starting with the middle. So by starting with what the technology is going to be around the data analytics, we are providing a solution without really understanding the problem. Also, ending at the end here, scalable, supportable, sustainable. If I say scalable, what does that mean to you? Scalable application. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, perfect, exactly. So it is, it can handle growth and it's extensible. Same with supportable. We could create this great application, users love it, but if we don't have a team on the ground or have some automation built into our deployment, then we can't support it. Same with sustainable. If, again, we build this great application, but we don't have money in the budget to actually let the application grow, users might get a little frustrated. They might want to put more into the system if they really like it, but if we don't have the sustenance to keep it going, they could get frustrated. And lastly, programs definitely should deliver organizational and business value. So what we learned when we're doing presentations, right? One of the best ways to make a point is to come up with a case study. A case study can be something that's successful or it can be something that was a failure. So I have a case study about a company called Global View. Global View is a fictitious name of a company that I consulted with not too long ago. Global View is this international global company. They sell software. Over the years, they had performed a lot of mergers and acquisitions, so they had a lot of legacy source systems that they wanted to retire. So as part of a multi-phase effort, they started to retire those systems. Now, I was brought in as part of phase 2 as the head of delivery. Phase 2 went really well, but we'll talk about what happened as part of phase 1. So Global View, the situation, they had 500 plus legacy systems that they needed to retire that were the result of multiple mergers and acquisitions over the years because they'd never retired their systems. So they wanted to load this data onto a SaaS platform. So they had a handful of cloud-based applications. And out of that, they wanted to get integrated, accurate, consolidated reporting, right? Kind of a no-brainer. Of course, why would they be doing this if they didn't want those things? So what happened during the implementation? They had no strategy. They didn't set up any success criteria. There was minimal technical program management happening. There was no buy-in from the stakeholders. The technical solution that was put in place was not the right fit because there was no buy-in. The users didn't say, oh, we wanted solution A. We got solution A, but we really wanted solution B. They were already unhappy there. There wasn't a lot of testing, and the system was set up without any monitoring and alerting. So just from this implementation, what do you think the result was? Yeah, it was like a big blow up. And I wish I could say this was something that happened like circa year 2000, 2005, right? We've all gotten smarter, we've learned since then, but this happened about 2017, 2018. So pretty current. So they invested all of this money in people, resources, processes, technology, multi-million-dollar endeavor, and they got no value. They had a system that they couldn't even put into production because the data wasn't quality tested, the users didn't want to use it, and they were in these war room calls for like 3 months trying to put in fixes and do new build stuff that they should have done as part of the original strategy. So it was not a great experience for them. Now phase 2 went much better. I was there during phase 2. So that was our case study. So analytic strategy, what we're here to talk about tonight. So for those of you who've said that you work with data programs, you do analytics, when you start your programs, do you take a strategic view, or do you work for companies that kind of go about it strategically? Yes? Good. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So that is what I. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's what kind of what a consultant does, right? They go in, they do the facilitation, they sit with the business. But you're right. So there is two different kind of varieties. Even if you're in a startup mode, there is some bare minimum you can do to kind of say, okay, what do we want to get out of this program versus just diving head in? Because I've seen it, what happens when companies just dive head in. And it might work, but as more people come onto the system and you add more data, you could outgrow that solution pretty quickly. If it met your needs initially and you're okay with that investment and you're ready to kind of toss that investment and make a new investment into something bigger, then that's okay too. I've worked with a lot of big companies who took that approach and they put lots of money into a system that wasn't really the right fit for them. So an analytic strategy, as this picture would suggest here, a strategy really of any kind is independent elements that when they come together, they work in unison to produce some kind of positive result. So in the context of analytics, we've got what the analytic goals of the program should be. We need to align our stakeholders to those goals. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Then we need to decompose those things down into a set of metrics. And then we need to answer some basic questions like who, why, what, how. And those things become the backbone of our strategy. So before we go into more specifics around analytic strategy, I want to take it up a level and talk about business strategy and business outcomes, because this is really important. So analytics should support the business strategy of the organization. So if you think about business strategy, right? Companies, the CEO and all of his or her people get together every year and they figure out what their business strategy is going to be. So most business strategy revolves around increasing revenue or increasing profit through a decrease in costs or increasing productivity or increasing efficiency or raising brand awareness. Now, brand awareness is a little hard to measure, but the first 5 are easy to measure if you've got the right data, you've got the right metrics, and you have strategy. So once we know what our business strategy is going to be, then we have our tactical implementation, which involves a lot of business process changes. So if we want to increase revenue, great. We're going to go out. We might bring more products to the market. We might hire more salespeople. We might sell through more channels or bring on more partners. These are all the things that we're going to be doing as part of our business process change. In the middle, that's where all of our data is created. But the outcome is the business outcome. So as part of our tactical change, revenue might go up. Great. Costs might go down. Super. We're on the right track. But we use analytics to measure how well we're doing with our tactical changes based on the strategy. And then from those metrics, we make adjustments to our strategy or to our tactics or both, and we expect that to feed back into our business outcomes. So let's go through an example of this. Anyone here watch Netflix? Half the room. Okay. No, man, you're good. I really don't watch it either, actually. I have a subscription. But as a company, what's Netflix's objective? What do they want to do? What do you think their goals are? I'm sorry? Yeah, yeah. They want to, exactly, they want to raise revenue. So how are they going to bring up the revenue? By offering more content, right? Is that what you're going to say? You're going to say something else. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for them to increase their subscription revenue, they need to bring in more content that you're going to find interesting, because if you don't find it interesting, you might go to Hulu, you might go to Amazon, you might go back to cable, who knows what's going to happen. So they're creating all this content. So as you're on Netflix and you are clicking around, they're taking all this data. They know about you, and they also have your user information through your user profile. So they're getting all this data, they're feeding it kind of through their algorithms, and the next time you log on to Netflix, they have an idea of what you want to view, and they're going to put that content in front of you, and that's how they get you hooked on the system. So you think Netflix is the greatest thing because you find all this content that's amazing, Stranger Things and whatever else they have. There's so much content on Netflix, I can't keep it all straight. But then you tell all your friends how great Netflix is, and you guys have a Netflix party, and bam, revenue goes up for Netflix. And this has been a very successful strategy for them. And so analytics plays a very important role in that process. Okay, so we talked a little bit about business strategy. So in my approach, when I'm working with clients, I take this approach. We define strategy, then we do a prioritization of the strategy, then we do a technical implementation, and lastly, we have support and operations. So analytics strategy. So we talked about before, when you're embarking on an analytics endeavor, you start with a set of goals. What you want to accomplish. Maybe it's Netflix and you want to raise revenue through better content. You might be PepsiCo and you want to bring new products to the market. You want to open up your products to new channels. There could be a variety of things. But you define the goals of the analytics program, and then you need to get stakeholder alignment to those programs. Now, I have worked with a lot of different stakeholder groups. I actually started my way through analytics by working in IT. So I kind of represent the IT side, but I work with a lot of business teams as well as other stakeholder teams. So in your experience, what are some of the stakeholder teams that you've worked with or that you've identified as being stakeholders? What business teams? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Marketing and sales are two of the most common consumers of analytics. Yeah. Anyone else? Was it like lab informatics, that kind of thing? Or, oh, okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a great use. Were you doing machine learning kind of stuff, or was it just? Okay. So we said scientist, right? Scientist. Okay. Anyone else? How about finance? Yeah, external customers, right? Yeah, external customers, definitely. What about, so those are kind of examples of business teams. What about like data teams? Application development, data engineering, upstream teams that are building out source systems for us. We might want to make sure that they are identified as a stakeholder and that we get their input or they understand what our goals are going to be. We've got the infrastructure folks. Those are the people who are going to be supporting the application. PMO. Anyone here a project manager, program manager? Yeah, so sometimes an organization might have a central PMO, right? They provide the support for how we manage and deliver projects. The sponsor, so whoever is paying for the program, obviously we need their buy-in and support on our process and methodology. So that was goals, stakeholder buy-in. I will say it's really important to get the buy-in. So buy-in means agreement, and it means setting expectations for what the different stakeholder groups need to do to support the application. So in terms of developing our strategy, we ask 4 questions. Pretty straightforward questions, but they reveal a lot of information and give us the backbone of our strategy. So we have the who, the why, the what, and the how. So the who is our application users. These are the business groups of individuals who need to do some insight based on the data that we have or the data that we can acquire. So a good example of that might be some HR users. So HR analytics is like a really hot thing right now. People insights. Companies want to understand retention and turnover and churn of employees and all of that. So maybe one of our goals for our business is that we want to increase productivity. So what would be an example of a way that we could increase productivity of our employees? If you're running a business, how could you increase productivity? I like the work from home. I think that is the best way to boost productivity. I think a lot of companies feel like you'll be more productive in the office, but I happen to take the opposite stance. So it's good to hear that people feel the same. Huh? No, I agree with that. That's a good point. Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think personally, this is an aside, but I think email is very unproductive because for that very reason, it just generates another response and then another response, and it feels like it will never end. What about training? Has anyone ever been hired by an organization and had the requirement that they needed to go through training? They didn't get the training? It's happened to me sometimes, where you don't get the training, and so you don't have the right tools and knowledge and access to the system to be productive. So an example of HR analytics in this case would be, we want to align our recruiting and our hiring efforts with our training and our onboarding programs so that those 2 programs are in sync. So in other words, we don't want to go on a hiring binge and then not have training set up for people, not have laptops ready to be imaged, not have the right system access set up for them so that they can be productive. That's a good example of analytics around HR and training. Now, a few other points about the who piece. We have roles. So within any kind of user group, there's always different roles. So HR is a good example. You might have an analyst, you might have a manager, a director, and a vice president. It's kind of good to know those things up front if you can get an idea of those different roles, because each one of those different groups is going to want to look at the data slightly differently. Somebody who's an analyst is going to want to look at very granular data. Somebody who is a VP is probably going to want to look at very aggregated data. So it's just nice to know that stuff up front and be thinking about that, because that's going to drive how you model your data. Likewise, when it comes to abstraction is how much of the base level data do we need to obscure from our users? People I found that are like analysts and power users need a lower level of abstraction, but somebody who is higher up the chain needs a higher level of abstraction. They don't want to know the nitty-gritty details of the data. They want to have that stuff obscured for them. The reason I mention it here is because if you need to bake in more abstraction, that needs to be part of your development cycle, and it's good to know it up front. Same with adoption. Has anyone ever been involved in any kind of adoption program for analytics or anything really, any kind of user application? What was the adoption that you were doing? Okay. Yeah. So that's a great point. So adoption can be low. So we need to think about adoption up front. So what are the different ways that we could drive adoption? Training, right? Maybe some quick study, sitting with the users, figuring out what it is that they liked about the old system and putting that into the new system if possible. It's kind of something you have to massage a little bit, and it's not easy. The reason I talk about it here as part of strategy is if you're going to be doing a lot of training or a lot of adoption, that is something that potentially could elongate your delivery cycle. And so it's good to know that up front and be thinking about that up front. So the why piece, why are we doing analytics? This is a really important question to ask. It's not always asked, but the why piece is very closely tied to the goals of the program. With the example of HR, why are we doing those analytics? Well, we want to align hiring and recruiting to our training and onboarding so that our employees are productive right away. They can get trained right away. They can get their equipment. And we think that is going to increase the productivity of our new hires. And that is going to roll into the overarching business strategy of increasing productivity. So there's a connection there. Now here we kind of decompose the goals a little bit into a set of metrics. They're going to be part of our delivery cycle, but asking the question of why are we doing the analytics is really important. So the what piece, this is our data. So show of hands, who works hands-on with data, either data science, data analysts. So when you go about doing data, what are some of the things you think about before you even start about data? You need access, yeah? Yeah, right? Does the data even exist? First of all, you just ask for a set of metrics, but we even have data to support what you want to analyze. You better check on that. Anything else about data? Yeah, okay, good. Very important. Actionable, yes? Yeah, data absolutely has to be cleaned. We could probably have a very long conversation about data, especially if they have a lot of people in the room who work with data. I just put a few bullets up there of some of the things that I've come across when I've worked with data teams. Sourcing, do we have access to the data? Can we source the data? We need to clean the data. We have to integrate it. We have to understand what the granularity of that data is. If we need transactional data, do we have transactional data? Or if we don't need it, let's not bring in the transactional. Maybe let's find a way to pre-aggregate it first. We have to think about the volume of the data and the history as well. Okay, when users want to do analysis, they oftentimes will ask for tons of history, even though why they're doing the analytics doesn't really support keeping a lot of history. Keeping a lot of history takes space. We have to pay for that storage. We have to maintain that data. Now, the how piece is our data and analytics technology platform. So this is really the technological meat of how we're making the magic happen. Once we know what data we have, then we have to go through this process of pulling all the data together somehow and then putting it into an actionable form and in a form that's easy for users to read. And so whatever types of analysis we're doing will help us make decisions about the how piece. Maybe we're doing historical trend analysis where we're looking back in time. What happened yesterday or what happened early today if it's late afternoon, right? Historical trending. So that might necessitate, a traditional kind of data warehouse environment with some kind of SQL Viz tool over top of that. We might want to think about how users are going to be accessing the system. Are they going to be accessing it through the web, through mobile, through email, or through some kind of chatbot? If we're doing real-time analysis like market campaigns, we're doing A/B testing with some market campaigns, and we want to be able to figure out which campaign is going to deliver the best ROI. So that's a kind of a different implementation that involves much more streaming data and making decisions based on what's happening right now. Likewise, if we're doing any kind of predictions, right, where we want to drive a user to make a decision, like recommendations, product recommendations on a website, or like with Netflix, the example I used earlier, we think people are going to watch Stranger Things, right? So we need to make sure that we've got the data to support pointing them or presenting that option to them. So what I tell clients when I work with them is don't lock into a technology too early in the process. I think that is a natural gravitation because people think of technology as being this great panacea. It's going to answer all of the problems, but it's really beneficial to go through this exercise of just asking these simple but key questions to get some background information, and then you let that drive the technical solution that you implement. At this stage, we're still doing strategy. It's perfectly acceptable to do like POCs, proofs of concepts, or do pilot programs. You want to get some more information, see if the technology is the right thing for you. Maybe you've got some security requirements, or you're not sure if you can support a cloud solution. It's fine to do those kinds of things, but I would say not locking into a technical solution too early will set you up for success. So from your experience, we talked about the who, the why, the what, and the how. So what do you think is the hardest question to answer? The why? Okay. Yeah, all right, that's true. Why do you think it's the why? The what? Okay. Yeah. So the what piece would be the data. Yeah. So I think it's the why, just from my experience, because because of the human variable. The why are things to document the why. You need to set up a lot of meetings with a lot of oftentimes senior people, and everyone has a different viewpoint that they bring to the table. Their mind is filtered by what their role is. And so the why is all about getting consensus and getting agreement. And with a lot of different people, it's really challenging. I have been involved in projects where my role was to do that, to get consensus and buy-in, and I would sit with users and I would document and I would document again and I would sit and I would type it up and I would put it in front of them, and to get them and everyone else to agree is really challenging. But then the data piece, obviously, yeah, that's really tough. If you've got data that's all over the place, it's not cleaned, you've got to take that task of doing that. So. That's true. That's very true. Yeah. Mhm. No, you're absolutely right. So, but somebody in the organization, my recommendation is that you have somebody in this organization in your organization who goes through these steps where you define a strategy so that by the time you get to engineering, you've answered these critical questions and the people who are doing the engineering aren't having to do some guesswork or making assumptions. Because I know when I was working with engineering myself and I was doing application development, if I didn't have answers to some of these questions, I had to make assumptions. Sometimes those assumptions are correct and sometimes they're not. What you don't want to do is do a lot of development only to find out that what you assumed is wrong and you have to undo what you've done and do something else. Because then that's pure loss right there. Yes. If it's not the right solution. Yeah. Understand the problem first. Yeah, right. It's a great point. So success criteria, the last partner strategy before we talk about prioritization. So has anyone had to define success criteria, gone through that process? Okay. So the exactness of what you're producing. Is that kind of what you mean? Okay. Okay. So kind of a meld. So I would agree with you. It is a little bit, if I understand correctly. I don't know that term precision as it relates to a model, but you're right. When I want to define success criteria, I usually start with a business, right? Because they're the ones that are using the system. So like if I'm the technical program manager, um, you know, and my job is to run this program and drive it across the finish line, then I need to understand how the business defines success. And so it could be something like performance, exactness of the data. Is the metrics, are they actionable in the way that I need them? Are the visualization set up? Now, how you define success overall is okay, did we get this expectation of lift that we thought? Did the data tell us that? If the data told us, gave us that answer, then that is also a successful program. But what I've seen, kind of akin to, you know, having the wrong solution and not knowing the problem is companies will jump into creating a program without really fully identifying what the success criteria is. And then when users get the system, if it doesn't do what they thought it was going to do, but they never really voiced that to begin with, then they're going to call it a failure, and that's not really fair. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was I totally agree with you. You're kind of sort of defining it as you go along based on the performance or the output of the system. That's sort of what I was alluding to here in terms of, getting to revenue. Let's say we want to increase revenue. We've made some tactical changes to our internal systems. We've done some business process changes. We've created a bunch of data as a result. And those process changes are driving business outcomes like increasing revenue. But the analytics piece is what we're measuring along the way. So we could be doing analytics here, we could be doing analytics here, we could be doing here, and then the final result might be here. But in this sort of iterative process, based on the results that you're getting from the analytics, you're going to be making changes possibly through here, but probably through here. That's kind of what I was alluding to. I probably didn't explain it that way, but I think that is that sort of kind of how you're viewing it? Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So almost like testing and piloting. Yeah. So I would agree. Yeah, I mean, iterations, but you can still define success criteria to each one of those iterations. Like, what do we want to get out of this iteration? What do we want to get out of this pilot, right? How are we going to use that information? So I think that's very fair. So in the interest of time, though, I want to jump to, the Ravi's not kind of short on his presentation, I want to jump to prioritization. So we talked about strategy, right? We answered those 4 questions. So prioritization is really important when we're doing analytic programs because the business wants everything right away. They want success. They want all their data. They want lots of history. They want great vizzes. They want actionable information. They wanted it yesterday. But we know anyone who's worked in technical programs or done engineering, you can't get everything done right away. And this is where prioritization comes in. It's a way of taking everything that you're going to be building and letting the business decide what the priority is. So they might want a whole suite of metrics that are all actionable, but if you dig in a little bit, you can kind of uncover, maybe it's just a few metrics. And so if they have this expectation that we're going to get this whole program end to end, tested, delivered, productionalized, out the door, supported, adopted, and everything, we need to narrow our scope down. So I let the business tell me what the priority is going to be, and I typically will set things up as short-term objectives, medium-term, and then long-term, with whatever is in the short as being the thing that we decompose the most. Anything that's a little farther out on the horizon, we can kind of decompose it a little bit, but if it's a longer-term view, we don't have to decompose it a lot, but we definitely need to understand what we're delivering in the short term. So last 2 things as part of our strategy is we have the technical implementation program as well as support and operations. So a show of hands, I know there was people who said that they were project managers or program managers. So, I spent years as a project manager myself. So something like this is probably like kind of near and dear to your heart, right? The technical implementation program. So once you know your strategy and you have an idea of what you're going to be delivering, then you need to start putting this into a technical program, divided up into a series of projects that each have a unique output. You integrate them together. That integrated program provides your communication vehicle. That's how you keep stakeholders informed. but you essentially are breaking out all the activities and you're delivering them across a timeline with the team. So what are some of the resources, human resources that we would need to deliver on a project? Mhm. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, business analysts to do requirements. If we're doing some source system analysis, we might need some systems analysts to go out and figure out how the source of data is structured, engineers, application developers. So each one of those projects are going to be kind of staffed with those. What about communication? Those of you who've worked in project management, how do you manage communication? Usually the PM will come up with some kind of template, keep stakeholders informed. Communication is very important. So because I myself have a program management background, I'm rigid about having a technical implementation program and not freewheeling things and not keeping things documented and having a team in place. Even if you're doing agile development, you have the work of your various sprints inside your technical program and you're communicating that to stakeholders. It's also how we plan for resources too. You know, we might need 5 data engineers coming up because our technical program tells us that we're going to need that many people through the next 12 months. So support and operations. I have found that support and operations is something that's often overlooked and undervalued. So support and operations, we could have this great application that we spent, 3 months developing, and it is the greatest thing. But if we don't have a team on the ground to support it, and we're not doing operations, so people can't get to the system in the way that we expected, then it's useless. And that money has been poorly invested. So support and operations covers things like monitoring and alerting on the system, performance, maintenance, right? Every system needs maintenance. We have to schedule those in. Whether or not we're going to be doing upgrades. If we have SLAs, how are we going to meet those SLAs? Failover and disaster recovery and business continuity. So very important things to think about up front. If there is an earthquake or a monsoon somewhere and our systems go down, we need some kind of failover in place so that people can continue to do the work and get to the data that they need. I'm told I have like 1 minute left, so we're going to go through a quick wrap up. Does anyone work in support, by the way? I'm just curious. Support and operations? Underappreciated, but super important. So in conclusion, we talked about analytic strategy. We talked about prioritization, technical implementation program, and lastly, support and operations. So I don't have it illustrated here, but this is very much a cyclical thing, right? We define our strategy. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. A strategy can just be a very quick thing that we put together in a week, and then we have it. We walk it around to all of our teams, and we go, hey, everyone, look, here's a strategy. Everyone should be focused on the strategy to do this program. As we're doing support and operations, once we put things into production, then of course we're going to be getting the results. New data is going to be coming in, and we might need to model that data back to our system. So it's very much a cyclical process. So I think I'm out of time. Yes. Are we going to do a separate Q&A? Are we going to do Q&A afterwards? Right there. Yep. And I'll hang out, so if we have anything, I'm happy to have a discussion or help you solve any problems that you're having. My name is Andrea Amaraggi. Again, my company is Cohere Insights. My email is andrea@cohere.com. So if you have any questions afterwards, you're welcome to.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me all? My name is Ravi Kulasekaran. I'm with Colabus. Um, I'll be talking more about a practical application of using AI, of how I envision we can do things. Um, so let me see if I can get this right. So everybody talks about, oh, we need to collaborate. We all need to do this and that together. Great, fantastic. Have you ever thought about having collaboration intelligence? You have ERPs, you have business intelligence, but have you ever thought about what happens to all the data that you're collaborating? Do you even get any intelligence? So before you can get collaboration intelligence, you have to realize you have to first collaborate intelligently. That's most important. So we'll reimagine how project management can be done with AI. This is a problem that I encountered, and back in the 99, 2000 timeframe. I had a very successful startup. We literally did about 60% of all the Oracle implementations in the Bay Area. So had multiple teams doing this stuff, and it was always like the holy grail, as Robert said, is, are my projects on track? This is the most simplest thing that you can ask, right? Or any initiative, whether it's a project or an initiative. You want to know, is it on track, off track? Do I need to intervene? What should I do? What's going on with the people in the team? And especially if they're distributed all over, are they happy? They're fighting, yeah, you might get a progress report from your project manager, 20%, 30%, everything is like, but do you really know what the problems are? Do you know if there's a lot of political stuff that's going on? People are like fighting each other. Some guy doesn't want to do stuff, or there may be some problems with the stuff that's actually happening. A progress of 30% is meaningless. The guy is crying out loud saying, my machine doesn't work, I need something to be replaced. You know that's a problem going to happen, right? How do you get this? So I always used to think, what if I could get a system that I could just, I'm going to play this. Based on the recent activity, the sentiment for dev_v4 is trending green with a score of 0.01. There were 22 inputs, of which one may be of concern. So that's the voice assistant that we have, where I just did this before coming to this meetup. I asked about my development project, what's the trend of the project? And it went and said, okay, there was some 20 odd inputs and one is of concern. So maybe I should look at it, right? So this is what we mean by having the system actually give us some input. So when I first, we had all the collaboration stuff, and I will talk a little bit more about the collaboration thing of what all needs to go in. So we went and asked some AI experts. I had to throw in all this thing, AI, blockchain, all the things that you need to throw in. So I asked a guy in AI, hey, is there any way, can you tell me what should I be looking for? I'm not a big data guy. So I was asking this guy, tell me what can we do on AI in this? Can the system tell me something about it? And I sat through this lecture. Dennis is with me. We have this guy who's a doctorate, and he's actually on my board. And we got this massive lecture of what Watson can do to, tell you what's the cure for cancer and all these other great things of how you have to have data sets and this and that. I'm like, I just want a simple thing. I got all this data. Tell me, is the project on track? And not a simple answer. Not a simple answer. Okay. So just imagine, how many of you have this problem? I just want to make sure. You guys run projects. How many of you want to know, like, is the project on track? Simple question. Okay. So let me tell you this. Okay. Actually, I like what Andrea said. She put $187 billion and all that. I had a, when I first started off, I'm actually making. Okay. Okay. Sure. So all your projects have always hit your deadlines? Sure. So every project, I'm telling you, this is like, I've been in the ERP world, and every time, it was like definitely the millions of dollars, if not, okay? Not the billions, maybe, I don't know. Nobody got fired, okay? So everybody would have this implementation that will go on. How long is it? When is the go live date? Oh, it's going to be Jan 1st. 2019 or 2000 and, like 20 or something like that. And the project just chunks along. People go, every time there's like some project manager guy who puts out a report saying, yeah, we are like 60% done, 70% done, something like that. Come January, will we go live? Oh, no, we got to replan. Sorry, we can't go live. We got to push the date out. How many of you have been in this? Pardon me? Do you want to know how many ERP projects in the Bay Area have gone like that? Forget the Bay Area. I could talk across the nation. I'll give you for everything that you said. A majority of projects used to always go over budget. None of these guys had the guts to come in and say, we will deliver the project at this date for X amount of dollars. I'll do it fixed bid. Tell me how many companies will do that? Everybody will say, we'll do T&M. It's going to take $5 million. And the company's thinking behind the scenes, $5 million, damn, it's going to be like $8 million by the time we're done. The CFO's already budgeting for $8 million. Okay, this is what would happen because everybody gets in. The timeline just kind of like goes along. Nobody knows what's really going on at the bottom. Okay. I happen to be with on one of the projects, which is a joke of the ERP implementation in the Bay Area. I don't want to take the name of the company. It went on, and they were burning like $1 million a week on consulting. So long story short, all the consultants, you could see the parking lot change from Toyota Camrys and Honda Accords to BMWs and Mercedes. So that'll tell you how the shift of wealth happened. Okay, so this is a classic problem where we every PM and every executive, and I used to have multiple projects running around, and I wanted to know what's going on in the status of each project. And believe me, it was not a very simple answer. People say, you're the CEO, you should know it. How the hell do you expect me to know? There are all these teams running around, they're all in different distributed locations. So this was a fundamental question that we were trying to answer. Thought it would be good to use how many of you have been through this kind of thing? This is the classic example of the reality. But by the time the guy is so jaded, he puts in some nonsense. Project manager kind of like puts a nice rosy picture to management. Yeah, everything is going great, right? The reality is different from what is reported. And this is the false picture that keeps getting every layer that you keep going up. Tell me this has not happened to you. Wow. Good for you. So, there are few, but a majority of companies those are probably the exceptions. Like, for example, the projects that we did, in my prior company, a go live was a non-event. I had like 6 companies go live the same day. No, in the sense, it's a matter of project control, right? What you're doing. Some guys can manage it well, but I can tell you, a good majority of projects are in the state. Okay, if you're managing great, I will shut up on that. But typically, this is what happens. Everybody goes. There's all this disjointed data, and everybody says, "Okay, let's try to do a replan." Project is delayed. Okay, and so you typically end up with doing large course corrections, not minor, quick things. And the agile process was basically to ensure that you're taking these minor course corrections and fixing things rather than letting the ship steer totally off. Okay, so this is basically what we do. So let's look at the process and the problems which really generate this stuff. So I'm just going to go through this collaboration lifecycle. And this is a typical scenario for most people. I'm just going to do the slide builder really quick. Okay. So all of us sit through meetings, mindless meetings too. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on. There's audio, video meetings. There's like guys getting on a phone call. I know Robert likes to work from Monterey, who wants to be at a distance. So this is the classic example that we have. People want to be this thing. Half the time we're dialing in and trying to figure out, are you on the call? And then you want to figure out, okay, what do we do? Okay. So from the meeting, we basically have certain action items. We want somebody, so-and-so, do this task, etc., etc. Fantastic. So that somehow needs to translate. So in a broad kind of breakdown, what we call a synchronous communication or a synchronous part of the thing. That is like, for example, this meeting. All of us have to be present here to know what the meeting is about. An asynchronous thing is basically you can be sitting and accessing this meeting via, like playing the video thing a week from now. You don't have to be in this meeting. Now, the guy who's sitting out and watching this video, like let's say a week from now, can't ask us questions. Here it's an interactive thing. So that's synchronous. There's interaction. But there are times when you want to do things which is asynchronous. And some of you use Slack, other kind of communication tools. You're communicating, you have conversations, you have documents. Then I think you mentioned something about emails, right? A lot of people keep sending emails, and I'm really perplexed because so many threads, so much information deep, and try to figure out which one is what. Have you CC'd everybody? And then there are tasks and progress updates. Progress updates, somebody has to communicate it to a project manager. A project manager applies a layer of kind of smoothing it out for the management to pretty it up. They don't want to show all the problems. And then finally, you kind of like, what should we show? And then come back next meeting. Next meeting is looking at the rear view mirror of what all we did. So first thing in the meeting is like, tell us what's going on in the project or whatever initiative. Oh, we had these problems, this happened, that happened. So now you're sitting first half of the meeting and rehashing everything that you should have already known about. And then you repeat the cycle all over again. Okay. So this is kind of the typical collaboration life cycle that we go through. Add to the complexity, we have distributed workforce. Like for example, my development team is in Bangalore. So I end up spending a lot of late nights, early mornings dealing with my team. I'm sure similar things happen, people working from home, or even a guy sitting out here probably doesn't want to talk to a guy out here. Okay, in the same company, they won't even bother to communicate. They want to send some email or something like that. Happens. So you have this kind of problem. You've got time zone now, you've got cultures, different guys. Some guys in Latin America may not speak the best English. He may not necessarily tell you all the problems that are there. And so how do we go fixing this? We start throwing in every tool under the sun that we can think of. Excel spreadsheet, Word documents, Google Docs. Let's do a thing on Zoom. Meeting. Somebody else says, no, I don't like Zoom. Let's go do it on WebEx. Okay? And you get Slack, Jira, you name it. There's like a whole melange of things. And management wants to make a decision. Should we go live? This is the classic question. Should we go live? Or is everything ready? And most of the time it's like, no, we got to replan. Okay. So the type of questions that you might have depending on your role in management could be very different. Could be asking different. But in order to make a decision, you need holistic information. And this is the problem. By the time you can process all this information that's going across these different silos, to make a decision takes a lot of time. What if the system could help you with that? But this is basically how it looks for management when they're troubleshooting a problem. You don't have the complete truth. So there's a classic story of 7 blind men trying to describe an elephant. And each one is correct based on whatever they can perceive in their own right. But the truth is something very different. And this happens when you try to apply AI to some little piece of information, or you get some intelligence out of some one part of the thing. You're not looking at the whole picture, so you're going to get all kinds of inaccurate information. So what's going to be the decision? It's going to be like pretty pathetic. So let's look at data sources. It's important that you can deal with data that is contextualized. What does that mean? So you might be working on multiple initiatives. It's important that data that belongs to a specific set of initiative is all together. It's logically integrated. So a conversation, a task, a communication, an email, et cetera, all for that particular initiative makes sense. But for something else, it's just totally useless, right? So you have to make sure that the data is contextual. That means bucketizing this information into quote unquote projects, workspaces, whatever you want to call it. And that makes it into logically integrated smart data. That's what we do, okay? Starting. Now, when we have this data that is all logically integrated, now you can apply some AI. And this was the kind of thing that we were trying to question, get answers to. If I have data like this, tell me what can you tell about the project? And so it took a lot of digging, asking a bunch of AI guys what we should do. And that's what we came up with, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we work with various data sources. Obviously, not everything will be resident with us. There's data from other sources, and it could be from any of these things like Slack or Spark or Jira or any of these things. So first and foremost, we collect all the data. I think we just heard about actionable insights. This is a great word, because anytime you have an artificial intelligence, I'm sorry, you still need human intelligence, okay? You can't check it out. Artificial intelligence is like a means of helping you make a decision. Ultimate decision is still a human, okay? So you want to be able to have the system process a bunch of stuff for you and give you some meaningful insights to say, go take a look at this. Maybe you want to pay attention. And that's why it's important that when you're trying to figure out whether your project is at risk, coming back to the trend line, whether it's like, happening or not happening, it's important that the system can look at all the data inputs and give you actionable insights, tell you what are the things that you may want to look at. And so that is what we do. We come up with looking at the data for sentiment, intent, emotion, give you recommendations. And again, the kind of AI tools that we use is like multifarious, because it's not one tool fits all. It's not one size, one size fits all. So here's the solution. And just to kind of reiterate the data sources, you want to take all of those things which you had, like synchronous communication, that is your audio, video, chat, meeting minutes, things of that nature. So just audio calls, screen share information, whiteboarding, if you're doing any, design things that you're interacting with people, okay? You want to be able to collect all that stuff. You want to be able to take all your asynchronous communication, which is all of this stuff, emails, right? Collect all of that. Sorry. And then you have a bunch of documents that you share. And that could be in various sources. It could be on your OneDrive. It could be on Google Drive. It could be on our drive. It could be on-prem. You want to be able to get all of that stuff. And last but not least, all your tasks, workflows, agile information, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're ready to do AI. Okay. So what are the building blocks? We started looking at, okay, we got all this data, what can we do, right? I didn't want a huge lecture of, oh, we got to do this column with that column and try to figure out, across the board what company. No. For a given company, what is specific? This is great if a lot of the AI examples are, let's boil the ocean and figure out what happens. Across the companies, what will happen. No. This is like what happens in a particular company. Tell me what's going on with the data. So we looked at all the inputs that we have. One of the inputs, the majority of the inputs are textual inputs. And for that, we do a sentiment analysis. So we wrote algorithms for doing sentiment analysis, normalized the data between -1 to +1 through 0. Okay, so -1 means it's a negative sentiment. A +1 is a positive sentiment. A 0 is neutral, and data will lie between these two. Okay, it's highly unlikely that you're going to have a -1 or a +1. Okay, those are like far and few between you're going to have, but the majority data is going to cluster in the middle. And a majority of projects are going to be somewhere around the neutral zone. Okay, that's typically what will happen. And then we want to do things. Okay, we got the textual inputs, so we got the conversations, emails, and all that other good stuff, task completion comments, and things like that. What can we do with quantitative data? So we have a lot of task inputs. Guys saying they completed this percentage of the job in X amount of time. Okay. And with that, there's a comment also if they put in saying, I'm doing this thing, I'm having this problem, or this all worked out fine, everything is good. All these kind of stuff that, even broken English that my guys put in, that's okay. It analyzes it pretty good. So now we can apply quantitative algorithms and qualitative algorithms for the sentiment analysis start making sense. Then we introduced natural language processing and voice. So like the example that I gave you, where I communicated with the system, with the voice assistant, tell me, how's my project going? And it came back with a response to a query, what should happen? Now, you can call it like, what's a great idea? The voice processing itself is quite tricky. It's a whole world unto itself. So being able to categorize the kind of questions, by the way, we support Alexa too. So being able to ask a question and get a reasonable response. Now it's very easy when we can say, what is the status of project XYZ? That's great. Or if somebody says, tell me what is the trend of project this thing? We probably want the same answer, but being able to handle this requires a little bit of work to be done in the voice context. Okay, and those of anybody have had any experience dealing with Alexa programming? You're good. How easy, hard was it? It's great for asking simple questions like, tell me what's the weather in San Jose? Okay, fine, that question is anticipated, out comes a response. But to do things that are interactive is harder. Those are like simple dumb things. Tell me a joke, like, you know, Siri, tell me a joke. Okay, fine. Or Alexa, whatever, right? Play me a song. Or you could say, okay, what are my tasks? And you say this task updated to 50% complete. That'd be nice. So we did this. I'll show that to you in the next slide. I think I have that. Yes, question. Top 3 risks. It'll show you the things in red. I don't know whether it's a risk to you or not. You have to make the decision. But we will tell you generally, looking at this stuff, this is what's going on. So you want to pay attention. So sometimes, see, this is where that's why I say, you have to apply human intelligence on top of it. Maybe a guy is really identifying a problem. He's saying, our systems, you know, we are trying to migrate this. I'm having problems with Java, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a genuine problem. Now, how much of a risk it is, it depends. You have to determine that, right? But you know that's a red flag. Huh? So those we will flag. That'll flag, you know. It's up to you to make up your mind whether that's going to jeopardize a project or not. I can't tell you that, okay? So the other thing is, we also have the ability to do natural language processing navigation. So I can say, go to this, you know, go to my tasks, or show me my documents, etc. So if anybody is interested, I can show that later. Last is when we're having an audio video call. This is another area of where we thought it would make sense to apply a little bit of intelligence. Is when we are having a conversation, wouldn't it be nice if the system can kind of recommend certain artifacts? It could be like maybe the documents that we need to probably have. It could be like the meeting minutes, or it could be like we had a bunch of whiteboard sessions that we scribbled and we talked about 2 weeks ago. Okay, or it could be the tasks that is pertinent to us or conversations that are pertinent to us. So those kind of things, again, you try to incorporate and bring some recommendations. So this is basically the recommendations engine. If you want to, let me see if I can play this. I just did this a couple of hours. So here is a thing I'm talking to myself, as an example, two people conversing. It shows you in this account, what are the artifacts that might be of interest to you during the call, okay? And it shows you like some of the conversations, you can look at it, or it could be like a whiteboard. So those are conversations, you got the whiteboards. So I just this was something that we had as a conversation a little while ago, etc. Okay? Or it could be the minutes of the meeting that we had. How many times does this happen when you're having a call and you want to know, what did we agree upon like 3 weeks ago? And somebody has to come and whip out the Excel spreadsheet from somewhere, right? And you can't find it. Yes, no. It's frustrating, okay? I was guilty of the same thing. I mean, I worked at Oracle, okay? We would all do the same thing. We'd all come into the meeting. How much is your task? Damn, last week I think I said 20%. 25% is good this time. So every time it'll just kind of be some percentage you pick out of a hat and throw it around. If somebody were to go back and say, wait a sec, you told me we are now it's supposed to be 80% complete. 5 weeks ago, you were like 35 or 60% complete. What gives? Nobody has. Nobody has a clue. So here's some other things of using the voice interaction.
Ramesh Kumar saw created task comment in dev_v4 project at 7:45 p.m. on 14th of November, 2018. The task comment is, today I worked on video and audio mute and hold option. Working on screen share. It is implemented for one-to-one. There is issue in handling the stream of screen share for multiple user. Working on that.
So what this is basically, yes. So this is actually what I did before coming to the meeting. I just, asked system, tell me what my notifications are. And it told me all the notifications that I have, and I can process it immediately. So whatever those guys typed in on the conversation or the task completion or, in our agile module or any of these things, it all bunches up. I've got the rundown. So this is using natural language processing. Okay. Same thing like we talked about update my task. I'll just play this for you just so that you can see. Update my task ID 299. Status complete.
Okay, what is the actual time?
Actual time, 1 hour.
Okay, what is your comments?
My comments.
Say my comments followed by comments.
My comments.
Skip say no.
My comments. Meeting has already been set up. So, it'll basically.
Okay, would you continue to update with the status completed and 100% progress anyway?
Yes.
Task is updated successfully. Try save list by notification.
So this basically tells you how you can use voice interface to get your work done, okay? Where there's a lot of intelligence built in. It's not as simple as saying, it's very easy for us to say, yeah, my task here, that's 100% complete, I spent an hour. And that's very easy to do, but to get it on the system, it requires this thing to be processed in a fashion where you can understand these different keywords and then process of that, okay? And no two people will say the exact same thing. Somebody will kind of like, update my task. Okay, task 1, 2, this thing. So you have to be able to figure that out, right? Any questions? Why? No. Yeah. So, Robert is giving me the evil eye. This is when we get to the cool stuff. So let me go through this pretty quick. So here's basically some of the output screens, and it shows you like these tiles are basically projects. Okay. Now, by show of hands, you can see your project is flagged with this. It's a yellow status, and you can dive in to see exactly how it scores too. So this is a system giving you an output of what it thinks the project is going on. You can true it up to what your project manager is saying, okay? This is basically, I just looked at all my recent projects. You can sort it by any which way you want. Now, let's compare 2 different projects that the system is recommending. So, what do you think about this project? So you might have to look at it. It's not necessarily not good. There's some problems out there, okay? This one is green. So if you've got like 10 projects you're dealing with, where do you want to go spend your time? You'll check out the red one. So there's no point in needlessly spending time on this. This is what the system starts doing for you, okay? So this is like when you dive into a particular project, it gives you the average score for the timeline, which is 1 month data. You can extend it out to any timeline that you want. I just did this so that you can see this. Now, this is an interesting way of visualizing your project. Every input into this project is now getting scored yellows, reds, and greens. Very good. Some problem out there, okay? And these looks pretty okay. So if I'm looking at the trend for this period, I'm not even concerned. I can very quickly make up my mind that everything seems to be going good. Okay. Good question that you have. It's between 0 to 1. We basically flip the thing. If it's red, it's basically, instead of a +1, it's actually -1. This way you can visualize it rather than if it were to go down. Just a different way, because when we tried it in the beginning, when we had the reds out here, it was not quite apparent. But when you start looking at this, it shows, okay, things are okay. We had a few problems, bumps on the way, things are going well, some problems, things are going okay. It's easy to visualize. The longer the length of red, the more negative sentiment it is. That's one way to look at it. Does it answer your question? Okay. Okay, we will talk about that. Yeah. Okay. So obviously we wanted insights. We want actionable insights, right? Tell me, why is that thing going red? So when you click on it, this basically tells you it's going on this project. This is the comment. I just put it up in a bubble so that you can see who the originator, what date it was. Okay. And it tells you it's coming from a conversation. Okay. So you know the origin of the data. You know why that is scoring that way. Now make up your mind whether that's, registration is not working. There is some problem. Obviously, it's a problem. It's a negative sentiment. How big a problem is it? Is it going to jeopardize the project? That's the thing for you to make the call, right? We're just flagging things for you so that you can see what makes sense. Okay, so just to give you some other interesting things that we looked at, what if we had multiple projects? So this is the project tile that you have. And from this, I'm sure you can draw the inference which project has more activity. Where are people spending their time? This is a no-brainer. It should be this one, right? Okay. So more people are spending time on that project. And by the way, that actually happens to be a development project. It's real data. What are the things we can say about individual insights, people on the team? So I picked these two extremes just for to highlight this. Just because this guy has a lot more red, it's not like bad on him, So the way to look at it is he might be probably highlighting a lot more problems on the system, which is good, right? And this guy's probably solving a lot more problems, or he could be a really nice guy, very pleasant with his team. He likes to interact, solving things. So it gives you a perspective of looking at how your team members are doing. Correct. So we're looking at a team member like this. His sentiment, all his contribution of whatever he's been. Read by the system. So a read necessarily means, right. So it could be multiple things. It could be that you look at this person, maybe you need to talk to him and say, hey, maybe you need to interact with your team. Maybe this guy is like, everything is like negative. Or it could be, if you look at mine, it's like red across the board because I'm always like the guy pointing out the problems. This doesn't work. I'm like, telling my team, we got to fix this, da, 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 da. So the interesting thing is the way the sentiment works is also interesting because depending upon the way you phrase certain things also might make a difference. So to a team member, go away, I can't help you. Man, where did this guy come from? Versus, hey, can you help me with this? I'm having a problem. That has a different score on the sentiment, the tone and the intent. Okay? So this is where you can start helping your teammates to become better and work with each other. Okay? So again, it's not a blanket, a red means bad. Okay? Could be like a guy's like highlighting a lot of problems that are there. Got a question? So this is a management report. No, they're okay with that. They just keep processing the stuff. See, again, unless you start pegging something like, oh, you've got so many reds, we're going to punish you. No, that's not the way to read this. Yeah. This is more an insight. Any AI system. It's just like, I mean, I bought a few things on Amazon. And I don't know who the hell does AI for Amazon, okay? But they keep insisting on producing the same product again and again. Why would I buy the same thing again? That's stupid. Show me something that would be interesting. We talked about Netflix, right? So the same thing happens on YouTube. You watch something and they keep insisting that you watch the same thing again. I've already seen that program. I want to see something else, something similar to that, maybe different. But this is what a lot of guys think. Because you bought a tablet, you're going to buy another tablet. No. That is why it's all by context. I told you this project is different from, so this is like two people on the same team for the same project. So that is why it'll do it by project. I don't know whether you caught that previous screen that I showed you. It has each project by project. So here you can see I have 3 different projects. If you look at the leftmost column, the team members are different on all 3 projects. Yes. There can be people who overlap. So what this will do is within the scope of this project, it will show this team member's insights. Whereas the same guy out here on a different project, how he behaves. So it could be possible that different teams have different dynamics. It's happened. I've seen that happen. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of like chug along. You can see who's more involved in a particular project. So if a guy's working on multiple projects, you can see where he's contributing. You know, what's his role. The other thing is tasks. So one thing what we do is all the task completions, it's not just a simple binary 0, 100, you know. You can even do like a percentage complete. You can then give some of your inputs. It could be a drop down. So all those are also analyzed and gives you the trend of the task. So here, for example, yes, this task was completed, but it's not a great looking trend. Maybe there's some concerns out there. Whereas a task with a trend like this, everything is good, green. Okay, so when you visualize your project, you can look at all the tasks. You can see how many are done. The green check marks are obviously done. And here, you can look at, of these, maybe I want to look at this guy. What are the issues? Yes, it got completed, but there's something not too great about it. Let me look at, should I be concerned? Right? It may not necessarily be late. It could also be other issues. It got completed, but may not necessarily be in like a very satisfactory completion, right? So like, let's say if I put in an input, yeah, the task is completed, but it's kind of working. It'll work in these kind of scenarios. So yes, it is a completion from my perspective, but I'm also flagging that there may be some issues that if you have these corner cases, it may not work. So that may not necessarily bubble up as a problem, but here this will catch it and say, you can then look at these things and say, is there a problem with these tasks, right? So the other thing is, how many of you have dealt with dealing with estimating tasks? This, I mean, everybody kind of like pulls a number out of the hat, okay? How good are your estimates? Do you even have a clue? So here it shows the estimations are in this purple mauve color, and the actual hours are in this thing. Sure. Okay. So this basically gives you an idea of how you can estimate versus actuals. So if you're consistently off on your estimates, you can start planning to do better, okay? The other thing is, whom should we assign a task to? There's probably some go-to guys or gals. They get their works done better. They got a better hit rate of getting things done. So you can probably look at the trend of who gets tasks completed on time or within the estimates or the complexity. What should we do? Okay. And then more of company-wide lessons learned. And there's a lot of knowledge that is actually happening in this, which is your institutional knowledge. Can you leverage so that the next project that you do, can you take all the good things that happen in one and bring it over and stop the bad things that happen? And so this will give you the ability to look at all the projects across the board that you're doing. What are systemic problems? What are the areas where you can reduce friction? Where can you do better estimates? This will give you the tools to do that. Okay? So finally, contextually integrated data helps you see the whole picture. AI makes sense when you have all the data, otherwise it's a bunch of nonsense. Okay? And I basically, there's a, we use a tool we used to use a tool for this screen share stuff. And it's like a voice call, and it'll tell you XYZ spoke for 10 minutes and, ABC spoke for 20 minutes. I'm like, thank you, I was on the call. I know exactly what, that's absolutely useless. But tell me more. Can I take the transcript of that and make sense of it? That's some other things that we do. So that is why when you have all the data, you can think better. Thank you very much, folks. Any questions?
One second, and I just want to give out a couple of shout outs.